And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. In the days following September 11th, 2001, a 30-foot American flag hung dangling, torn, and tattered from the scaffolding at 90 West Street, the building directly south from where the World Trade Center once stood. As the days went by, the white stripes of this flag turned gray from the smoke at Ground Zero. As the weeks went by, the flag was shredded to pieces as it flew loose across the scaffolding that was damaged in the collapse of the South Tower. In mid-October 2001, Charlie Ditchers, the construction superintendent for the entire cleanup effort at Ground Zero, sent a crew up the scaffolding to rescue the remains of the tattered American flag. His original intention was to have the flag honorably retired as you would any American flag torn or tattered. 7 years later, Charlie still had the pieces of the original flag in a plastic bag at his house in Pennsylvania. And on the 9/11 anniversary, 2008, when our group, New York Says Thank You, went to help rebuild the town of Greensburg, Kansas, which was wiped out by an F5 tornado, Charlie brought the pieces of the flag from New York with him. And when our volunteers were helping to rebuild Greensburg, all the little old ladies at the Senior Citizen Center in Greensburg, Kansas, stitched the flag back together. Where pieces of the original flag were missing, they sewed in American flags that had survived the Greensburg, Kansas tornado. So they literally stitched together our histories, what was destroyed in the aftermath of 9/11 in New York, being brought back to life 7 years later by folks in a small town in Kansas. That's what America is all about. We estimate well over 200 million Americans have now seen, heard the story, or personally experienced the national 9/11 flag. At our first stitching ceremony in Arkansas, Carlos Miranda, a Vietnam vet who lost his son in Iraq, brought his son's medals. And he said, "Is it okay if I put my son's medals on the flag so he could stitch with me?" In New Jersey, on September 14th, a 10-year-old girl who has no memory of what her dad looked like put a stitch in a New Jersey patch. And she looked at me and said, "The stitch that I put in, is it permanent? You're going to take it out?" I said, "No, it's going to be there forever." In St. Louis, on Veterans Day, a woman broke down in tears when she looked at the flag and she says, "When you see all the stitches, you see nothing but pure love." The Texas patch was sewed by soldiers and school kids who survived the shooting at Fort Hood. On Pearl Harbor Day, on the deck of the USS Missouri, in Pearl Harbor, World War II veterans stitched the Hawaiian patch. On January 13th, at the funeral of Christina Taylor Green, the 9-year-old girl born on 9/11 who was killed in the Tucson shootings, this flag flew at Christina's funeral. The very next morning, the family of Martin Luther King Jr. stitched the Georgia patch at the King Center Memorial in Atlanta. On February 12th, President Lincoln's birthday, a piece of the flag that President Lincoln was laid on when he was shot in Ford's Theater that had fallen off was sewn into the fabric of the National 9/11 flag. So as you all get a chance, after our ceremony, everybody's going to have a chance to stitch. When you walk up, you'll see in the bottom right corner of the blue field, there's a small white patch with blue threads, and those blue threads came from the flag that cradled President Lincoln as he lay dying. This flag was sewn by members of our space program at Kennedy Space Center, along with a 7-week-old child from Michigan who happened to be visiting that day. This flag was sewn by survivors of Columbine, by survivors of the Oklahoma City National Memorial, by firefighters in Slidell, Louisiana, who brought their community back after Katrina. This flag was also the official flag of the Kentucky Derby. Just a few weeks ago, 20 members of Congress sewed the Washington, D.C. patch. And at the end of the day, at sunset, we took this flag to the steps of the U.S. Capitol, unfurled it, and sang "God Bless America." What an incredible day to be here at Mount Rushmore. Our goal is to make this flag whole again by the 10th year anniversary of 9/11, at which point it's going to become part of the permanent collection of the National 9/11 Memorial Museum being built at Ground Zero. And our hope and our prayer is that for generations to come, This flag does not just tell the story about what happened on 9/11, but it tells the story about what happened on 9/12, when Americans came together to help each other recover and heal. That's what this entire flag stitching ceremony is all about. There's some particular nominees who've been, their stories have been shared with us. We're going to call them up and ask them to stitch first, and then afterwards, everybody who's here will be able to place their own stitch in the South Dakota patch of the National 9/11 flag. This patch was made from flag material, as we mentioned, that flew at the gravesite of the gentleman who designed Crazy Horse. And part of the white flag material is also from a flag that flew here at Mount Rushmore on 9/11. So it's very, very appropriate. Before we get into the nominees, we want to recognize the recent tragedy, not only what happened in Afghanistan with our SEALs and other forces who were lost, but here in the community of Rapid City, just last week there were 3 officers shot, 2 fatally, and we'd like to call up Lieutenant James Johns to stitch in their honor. I would just like to share with you the stories of the 3 officers. On Tuesday, August 2nd, 2011, Rapid City Police Department officers were involved in a shooting incident after officers stopped several individuals for questioning. Officer James Ryan McCandless was killed, and 2 other officers, Nick Armstrong and Tim Doyle, were critically wounded. The officers were part of the city's street crimes unit. Officers James Ryan McCandless, a 6-year veteran of the department, was 28 years old. He was recently engaged, looking forward to owning farmland in the area. Officer McCandless will be buried in Midland, Michigan. Officer Nick Armstrong, 27 years old, and a 2-year veteran of the department, died on Sunday, August 7th. Born and raised in Rapid City, Officer Armstrong came from a family of public servants. His father, Bill, had been with the Pennington County Sheriff's Office. His mother, Kim, trains rescue dogs, and his brother is also a firefighter. Nick Armstrong had previously worked in the Spearfish Police Department. Officer Tim Doyle, a 16-year veteran of the department, is recovering from his injuries. He is married to Charity Doyle, a Rapid City alderman, and has 2 children. I'd like to ask Lieutenant James Johns to step forward and place 3 stitches, 2 in the memory of Officer James McCandless and Nick Andrews, and 1 in honor of Officer Tim Doyle. As we call up all the nominees after you stitch, if you kindly sign the guest book, which is actually going to become part of the 9/11 National Memorial in New York as part of your record. The number of nominees I'm going to call, there are a few that might not be here. When I call your name, if you could just please step forward and I'll read your story. If you're not here, if the person who nominated him could come, and if I'm reading and nobody steps forward, if one of the local first responders or a member of the Park Service would stitch in their honor, it'd be a way to recognize their service. Good morning, my name is Jeff Parness, and I'm founder of the New York Says Thank You Foundation, and we're proud to be the custodians for the National 9/11 flag. A tremendous honor to be here at Mount Rushmore, the official South Dakota stitching ceremony of the National 9/11 flag. I'd like to call up Blaine Kortmeyer, from the National Park Service and the Mount Rushmore Memorial for a few welcoming remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mount Rushmore. You're seated in the Sculptors Studio, built in 1939. It houses As you can see, the original scale model. This is the original scale model. Gutzon Borglum was intensely patriotic. He was the individual who chose who would go on Mount Rushmore and why. Obviously, we all know why the presidents were chosen. But it's Gutzon Borglum, the spirit of Borglum here in this place, that I think there is no better place at this location than this place to hold this ceremony. The spirit of Borglum lives here. So thank each one of you for being here to help. Words really can't describe what I'm trying to feel right now, what I'm feeling right now about this place and this flag. It's intensely patriotic, and Mount Rushmore is the place. And thank you for being part of that.
Thank you, Ben. You know, some of the best things are never planned. We got a phone call a few weeks ago from a gentleman by the name of Jim Simpson here in South Dakota, and he said, my daughter Anna is Miss South Dakota, and would it be okay if she took a flag that flew at the gravesite of the gentleman who created the Crazy Horse Memorial, and if Anna could take the flag around the state for a few weeks to let veterans and other service heroes place a stitch in the flag so that Anna could bring it here to Mount Rushmore, just to include them. I believe over 450 veterans and active military folks from across the state. So I'd like to call up Anna Simpson in South Dakota at the sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. What an honor it was to be able to travel the state with, of course, the flag of Crazy Horse, and then to be a part of this national 9/11 flag, which I'm still blown away by the size and I guess just the meaning of it all. It's been such an experience, and it's something I'm going to hold with me for a very, very long time. I wrote a short speech for today. I'm a fifth-generation South Dakotan, and I'm inspired by the phrase, prove it up. This term came from the Homestead Act of 1862, where homesteaders would stake a claim on 160 acres of land, then start their daily journey to prove it up. These pioneers struggled against drought, blizzards, disease, prairie fires, and yes, death of loved ones. There were two conditions that they had to do to get the reward of free land. They had to improve their land, and they had to live on it for 5 years. I know these stories well because my great-great-grandfather and his family proved it up in a sod house outside of Leola before South Dakota was even a state. But this term still rings true today. From our veterans that proved it up, to our first responders, our teachers and farmers, to the widow that works several jobs to make sure her children are taken care of, and to the small business owner that is short on time and money but still gives of his resources to help his community. This is what the National 9/11 flag represents, a living testimony to the resilience and compassion of the American people. We had a tragic day almost 10 years ago where America experienced a very dark time, the horrific event of 9/11. In the aftermath of the World Trade Center, there was a flag still waving. The National 9/11 flag is being stitched back together from retired American flags from around the country. And then the flag that I had today, which you guys will be able to see as you get close, was the one from Crazy Horse. And I had the opportunity to travel the state and meet with many, many veterans and different South Dakotans who have been so honored to be able to put a stitch into basically what is a part of history. Like the homesteaders, we as Americans proved it up with the same roadmap to success, always improving our land and staying with it even through the toughest of times, with our reward still being that our land stays free. Thank you everyone for letting me be here.